Is Dr. Michael XUAN. He is the founder and chairman of Unidata Technology, a company based in Shanghai, focusing on big data, AI technologies, and incubation of companies. He also the co-founder eBao Technology and innovator co-business system software company for insurance industry. As well as he found the SMAIL Institute, most importantly, that I'm a part of that institute too, as well as his PhD advisor is Dr. SMAIL. So, and it's my great pleasure to introduce Michael to you, and welcome Michael.
Thank you, Indika and Professor SMAIL for the invitation. It's my pleasure to share what we have been doing in my company related to the data application. So today, I will first give some introduction, and then I give two examples, which I call application of mathematical data. As Indika mentioned, I founded that company called Unidata more than 10 years ago, which is focusing on data and intelligence. So now certainly we often say big data, and also we have a lot of interest in recent years in artificial intelligence. So the company itself is a research and product company, which we, in terms of research, we study in algorithm, theory of computation, model of computation. We also, study a paper which Professor SMAIL and Indika wrote on the mathematics of genome, and also cell programming. We also try to be part of the future work in that direction. But most of the time, certainly we are working on data and the data application. We try to solve problems in different industries related to the data and data science using AI technology. So in that direction, we also, based on some product or application or technology we develop, we try to incubate some startups which very focusing on particular vertical industry, and which we try to be optimize all these technology and the solution for particular industry. So each kind of startup we are focusing on its own industry, and to really perform, give more reliable or better solution. So that's the company itself. And today I certainly we'll talk about some work we have been doing within company. So it's kind of group work, and rather because we have been doing work in different directions. So today I'm more sharing some work related to the healthcare and medicine. So it's some part of our work we have been doing. So it's also led by two principal investigator, Jin Jiyan and Morris Xu. So I'm more planning some more work led by these two researchers. As a research and product company, we actually also hiring many PhDs from different subjects, mathematics, computer science, algorithm computation, and neuroscience, and brain science, and social science. So we try to having more more people to focusing on different problems. So today's work, what I'm sharing certainly is not actually much about the genome data and cell and mathematics, but I think those kind of data and could actually be eventually to be used to create more optimal solutions or more optimal prediction, which I'll talk about. And so genome data, protein data, the protein itself, Professor Ullman talked about a few days ago, I think could also have, eventually have a widespread application in those areas. So that's what I what I see about the company and the direction. And then another thing I also want to mention, because today I'm talking more about the algorithm, especially on machine learning algorithm. So as you said, as you heard a lot in recent years, we has been a lot of coverage of machine learning, which sometimes we call before we call data mining or statistical learning. And we also use some data science, the term of data science. But in computer science, I think we typically call machine learning. And so machine learning has been has gained a lot of publicity, and also in the last few years, and has solved a lot of good problems, especially like deep learning, deep neural network in vision, voice recognition, and also some progress in the natural language processing. So a lot of people now are interested in those kind of algorithms. So we certainly have been doing in that, using those kind of algorithms in different areas. And as I would say, deep learning certainly is kind of a non-linear square problem. Sometimes we can, in mathematics, it's like an optimization problem. So we try to minimize certain functions. Sometimes we say there's error. Sometimes we sum up the cost. But actually, we try to minimize some function, which is a sum of different terms. Each term actually related to each sample, because we need a lot of samples. So that's a lot of terms. And the typical method in mathematics optimization is trying to use called descent gradient descent. So it's trying to you are at a certain point at the mountain, you're trying to find the direction which you can descend, and trying to find some solution. We often call the minimum. So, but in deep mining, because a lot of samples, they use a lot of samples, so sometimes they don't, each update of this step, they don't calculate all gradient for all samples. They only calculate one gradient at one sample, or small percentage of sample to save the cost. So to be a fast algorithm. But interestingly, that kind of process actually, why saving a lot of cost actually gets quite a good result. So that's the one thing actually many people still have the knowing well. The algorithm, why the algorithm is performing so well. So deep learning has been gaining a lot of acceptance. But we are not so sure why it worked so well for deep learning method, especially called deep neural network, because sometimes these two terms are also be used for same meaning, called deep neural network or deep learning. So that's the algorithm is quite simple, based on many layers of network. So each layer is very simple function, but when you compose or composition of these different layers, so it gets very complicated and a lot of parameters. Because you have a lot of parameters, so you need a lot of samples. So that's the way the algorithm itself is not very complicated. But why it works so well, it's still a mathematical algorithm question. So. And also, there's that kind of particular kinds of algorithm has been used a lot in the image and has gotten a lot of good results. for the medicals, even for medicals, have to be applied different areas like lung cancer, breast cancer, even brain. So that already has been used quite a lot in different areas of medical image. So that's some introduction I would like to give. And now I'm give two examples. So one is called cancer detection, early cancer detection, lung cancer and breast. Maybe I see. Okay, so these are not slides. So first I want to talk about the lung cancer detection. So as I written in the slides, the lung cancer is a big problem in China because so many people was diagnosed as early lung cancer each year. So it's about 700,000 people each year in China was diagnosed as a lung cancer. So, but also there's also for lung cancer there are also a very low, very inexpensive way to find them. So by taking CT scan. So it's the cost only $25 per person in China. So it's a quite low price technology in China. So if we can use that inexpensive technology to help people, help doctor to have early detection of lung cancer, certainly it can help a lot. So in China, so that's why we first interested in this area because you have image available, but obtained by very low price. But it also has a lot of patients, a lot of people having this kind of disease. So that's the problem we would like to attack. And also in recent years, like a convolutional neural network also has been developed to solve that kind of problems. So we use some algorithm in that area. So we're trying to optimize and trying to developing a product to really give a good accuracy in solving that. So as you know that how a radiologist to find a lung nodule, which certainly could be an indication of a lung cancer, early lung cancer. When people take the CT scan, so they have you have a lot of slides of the image, maybe 200 to 300 different projection. But the doctor or radiologist have to look at all these image to see if there's a small nodule in that CT scan. So it takes them time for them to find out. And usually it takes a doctor or radiologist 10 to 15 minutes to look at one person's CT scan and to see if that person has a small nodule. So that takes time. So in that wise also, it's not only the time. A lot of radiologists, a lot of doctors in China, especially in the west part, countryside, they make wrong decision. So they look at these scans and they actually give a wrong decision on whether there's a small nodule, or even eventually we also need to tell if that small nodule indicates some malignancy, which is important. So it takes time. So the way because it's too very small. How big is the small nodule? It's about 3 millimeter to 15 millimeter. So it's very small. You actually have to try to find the area as early as possible for surgery or for other way to curing that. So you need to find area because it's early stage, so it's very small. And even when you find one, they have like different types of invasiveness. So basically, you can think of the different stage of that gland. Could be lung cancer or not, but it could be different types. So you have to also, besides finding them, you also need to indicate which type of invasiveness of this. So it's called nodule classification. So, and besides that, so that's the procedure. So you have to locate this, whether or not there's a small nodule, and also you have to classify it's malignant or it's benign, and also that's invasiveness you have to classify. So that's the problem. So the problem. So now I can describe the problem is that you give an image, you input a lung image, basically a CT scan, could be for different medical use, images could be different. Some are not CT scan, but for lung is always almost very standard CT scan. So it's a typical way. So you need to find algorithm basically, but we sometimes call network, to output. They give the image and output that decision. The decision is that first is that whether there are a small nodule. If there's some small nodule, you need to point out where it is. Okay, and then after that, you also need to classify the small nodule is malignant, which means quite serious, right? Could develop to cancer, or then also classify the severeness, so it's called invasiveness. So that's the problem, is the input and the output. So how do you solve that? How do you do that? So that's the way it's a typical like supervised learning, because you can ask the doctor to label some image for certain patients. Then you use that kind of labeled sample to try to create a classification algorithm. And the algorithm is there. You have to use a classified network to do that. So it's a mainly supervised learning. And sometimes that has been studied for a while, especially in the convolutional neural network. But lately we have been, there's some progress, if we call 3D CNN. So you try to mainly to improve the algorithm to get better accuracy. But it's a technique. 3D is one technique how to develop that kind of network more precisely. And mainly it's trying to concentrate not by looking at each projection, actually by combining that and by volume. So that's the way which is 3D network instead of the 2D network. Okay, so that's some main ideas. So we build two networks one is set for nodule localization, which you find where it is. If there's a small nodule, you need to find where it is. Besides to find where it is, besides to whether there's any nodule, and also you find where it is. So this is one network, and it's like about many layers. To solve that, usually you have to develop a very called deep neural network, means many layers. So it's about usually the number of layers we have been doing is from 50 to 100 layers, so different layers. So I'm not going to go to much detail of that. And also we developed another network which as a classification. As I said, because you have to, if there's a small nodule, you have to classify it's malignant or benign, and also classify this different type of nodule. So that's the two networks we build. So we build two networks. One is for locate whether there's a small nodule, and another is classify the type of the nodule. So that's some results we get. I think pretty good results. And for different, we call, we have some sensitivity, but we also have, because in sensitivity it means you try to, as long as there's a potential small nodule, you're trying to find more. So there's a potential, you don't miss that. But sometimes because you want to more accurate, so sometimes you introduce some called false positive, which actually is not a nodule, but the algorithm sometimes detect it is. But so that's different, based on the different false positive, you have like comparison of how much accuracy you get. So if we look at like a typical one or average one, yeah, it's like about 90% you can, accuracy you can get. So with that, it's actually, that kind of level is already the best, the best doctor in best hospital can get. So the algorithm itself certainly can perform as well as the best doctors in China. So, but the good thing is that the algorithm itself, it only takes 2 to 3 seconds to do that instead of 10 to 15 minutes for doctors. So that's certainly a good saving of the time, and with the same accuracy for the best doctor, on the level of the best doctor and the best hospital in Shanghai. So if you compare that algorithm certainly with other doctors, and in most of part of China, certainly the algorithm itself is much better, much more accurate, much more accurate than human being. And so that's the previous slide indicates that the nodule localization. This also gives some results for the classification, which is also quite well in this regard. So we think that for lung cancer, the algorithm itself, can perform pretty well compared with human being. So I think it can have a lot of potential for that. And for invasiveness, we also can get very close to the human doctors. That's human doctor. So maybe it's a little better. Human doctor with like 10 years experience in a good hospital, in top hospital in Shanghai, can do a little bit better than the system, but it's already very close. It's already very close. Our result is already much better. It's better than I reported last year. And so the algorithm itself, can learn quite fast when you give more data to to the system because you have more patients, and doctor can give more labeling for certain image, and the algorithm can automatically progress itself and as it's looking at more data. So it's already very close, and so by this kind of work we do, we also develop a system which doctor can use in hospital. So we develop a system based on this technology, and a system which you just push a button, just automatically feed him an image, and the system itself can automatically output the location of nodule if there's any, and also give type. So it can help the hospital and also doctors. So currently, because computer cannot be licensed as doctor, like give prescription of. So this tool currently is just a tool helping hospital and doctors. So doctor can use that because initially it needs like 10 to 15 minutes. You can use the tool for first and click that, and 2 or 3 seconds it will tell that there's any nodule there, and then doctor can look at it once more again, but save a lot of time. So that's could be very useful to the hospital, and especially for Chinese healthcare. So this is what we did, mainly to develop a technology and a system doing that, and because of now actually quite many people quite a few group of people in China developing such a tool. So we are one of them, and based on this our development, we licensed that this technology and the tool we developed into a startup. So the startup itself can use that system to working with hospital. So the startup itself now, based on that, has already working with 30 hospitals in China, but also the number of the hospital will keep increase because there's a lot of hospitals in China. So they has already working with 30, including the biggest one in Shanghai. So actually it has most. This hospital in China has you have a lot of people in China. So that particular hospital has the biggest number of patients among the world. So from Shanghai, called Shanghai Chest Hospital or something like that. So, and also it's China is also planning to give CFDA license, CFDA to those kind of systems. So it means that maybe after 1 year, that the decision the system gave can be used as like a doctor's prescription. So it's already applied the some local province is already issuing some CFDA, but the whole China is going to issue some CFDA called CFDA license to some groups of company or system, which so that can give more widespread use of such systems. So the startup we incubated also is applying that, and they are going to pretty much get the license in 1 year. They are going to get the state license, like California State in the U.S. You can give a kind of a license for particular states, but they are getting a state license, but it also going to get a national license, CFDA license next year probably. So that's the way. That one example I would like to give, and but certainly what we are using is only using medical data, means image data. And certainly, as you can imagine, image data is one part of the, data actually we can have for a person. So if we have, clinical record or genome data, and I think, can also help, especially you already find a nodule. Then I think genome data can be used to have a better, diagnosis of that. As I said, it's malignant and classification. So I think I can see those kind of data can be used for better classification. And but certainly when eventually after you having that, knowing that, I think other genome or cell dynamics or some reprogramming eventually can also be used in the treatment, I think. So hopefully that we can do something more in that. Other, lot more. Some people here can do more. And certainly we also need to understanding the algorithm better, which is always interest, because deep learning it's more like engineering work. You have the block of the you have a lot of kind of a block of the network, and you're trying to assemble them. You're trying to using the samples to optimize them. But sometimes it's very difficult to know. Even sometimes it's not very easy to explain why it's get to a minimum. Because as we say in optimization, you cannot distinguish local minimum and global minimum, because you should be always getting to the local minimum. But in deep learning, deep neural network, when you get the local minimum, seems that the results is very close to global minimum. So that's why we have like it's quite hard to understand why the algorithm is working so well. So like local minimum is actually quite close to global minimum, seems. So that's a thing we certainly hope to understand better. So that's why I say deep learning, you have a lot of engineering work which you can try and you get to a reasonable performance, good performance. And so we also did something for other cancers, which I know because of time I'm not going to say too much about breast cancer. But these two, breast cancer is the second cancer probably also affecting in terms of the number of people affected. So it's also important area. Now, I'm going to give a second example of data. This example is we began to look at this example when Mike Shook visited us 2 years ago. He said he did something algorithm, and he think might be useful. And so we kind of look. He told us some algorithm he did, and also the problem. He told us the problem, and we think that problem certainly could be a meaningful problem, especially for for China. Let me describe problem first. We call disease prediction. Means the doctor, if any person go to hospital, you have records which disease, like this year you could have the disease, and next year next time you went to hospital, you could have different disease. So after this called disease sequence, for each person you have sequence of disease, different type of disease, right? So it could be, and so each patients are different. It is different, but certainly there's a list of disease. Could be just one of the disease. Common disease, list of disease in the U.S. is about more than 10,000. 10,000 kind of disease, a code. So they have this code. Now I put a question mark there. It means when you have the patients 1 have disease 1, disease 8, disease 7, disease 3, and in 5 years, or in 2 or 5 years, what kind of disease you will get. That's contradiction problem. So the problem is predict after you get a certain disease or give me certain sequence of disease you have you probably have record in hospital. Eventually anyone should get that sequence, get the information. And now if you know that you have high probability getting certain disease, you probably can have prevention that. So the problem is that give the certain this table, the goal is to find the transition probability means from certain disease to certain disease, or from list of certain disease to disease you might get. So that's the problem. So Mike Ship, I think, gave us the algorithm. He said he's not sure if it's any use of that algorithm, but he gave us algorithm. And so the algorithm itself is not too complicated, but it's related to max entropy idea. So you form a matrix A, Aij. So big N is the number of disease. As I said, in the US, it's like 10,000. So it's 10,000, 10 by 10,000 matrix. So Aij is the number of patients who suffered from disease I before disease J. So that because disease has sequence. So you can just count the number of the patients. So you get a number. It's actually it's an integer, positive integer number matrix. Then you have matrix, and you can solve a eigenvalue problem. So you have the eigenvalue problem here, AR equal to lambda R. And because we call parallel floor beings, eigenvalue problem is trying to just find the biggest eigenvalue and eigenvector. Okay, so you have matrix, you can always solve the eigenvalue and eigenvector. So, but the eigenvalue, you only find the biggest eigenvalue. And then, as long as you calculate that transition probability, so you can just, because you have Aij, you have eigenvector, and you can calculate that. So he gave that algorithm to us, and so that's what he did.
Question. So the matrix A.
Yeah.
What is the rank of matrix A?
Rank.
So that means what is the distribution of eigenvalues? This is only using the largest
eigenvalue. I'm not too sure, but we usually, I think we. I'm not too sure the rank of that, but seems maybe it could be full rank. So we use the training set. So there's a 3 million records, medical records. We tested, we trained and tested, and we use that training. Training the 3 million records as the algorithm, and then we also tested. And now, so that's the results of the Mike Ship's algorithm. And what I use call max entropy. And so now, the first column is that how many disease you predict, because you can predict the one disease. That's most difficult. And you can also predict, say, you have these are the 5 diseases you potentially can get. So you can output like 5 disease. So that's the first column. First column, I use the 1, 2, 3. You can also output 10 potential disease you might get, a person might get. So I use the different rows to indicate how many disease you predict. And then you can, so now, the one way is to predict is just use the call most frequently. Most frequent, that means you always guess. Guess the disease, which because most frequent disease, you can look at the statistics. You can also always get the most frequency. So most frequent disease is the kind of a benchmark, But certainly, the benchmarks, the algorithm can compare. So that's the most frequent. If you, for example, I use 5 disease. If we use the most frequently algorithm itself, like very simple algorithm, your accuracy is about 4.63%. And if we use Max Schup's algorithm, can get to 7.25%. So there's some improvement of this algorithm, compared with a very simple algorithm. So how much improvement is like 56% of improvement. Sometimes we divide the 7.25 by 4.63. We call the lift. Lift means how much you lift that result. So the lift is like 1.57. So a reasonable algorithm. And certainly, so now our problem is, can we do a little bit better? So when we tried this algorithm, and then we did some, so that's as you see, it's just a different way of express the improvement. So first thing we did is that we modified the matrix. Using some idea which we did in a lot of natural language processing, instead of using this AIJ, which I defined, we modify that matrix a little bit by log 1 over Fj. And 1 Fj is the proportion of patients who suffer from disease. So you kind of modify that by the number of patients in particular disease. So that's modify the matrix a little bit. And the idea is like natural language processing. That's called IF. Term frequency, inverse document frequency. Some of you might know, which trying to measure the importance of term in an article. So we use a lot in natural language processing. So by doing that, and we do the same algorithm step, just change the matrix A a little bit, and we still find the biggest eigenvalue and corresponding eigenvector, and calculate that the proposition transition matrix, transition probability from one disease to another disease, and we can get 20% improvement. So as I said, it's a 1.56. So you can have a little bit better result using that. And then we exploring, as a little bit more as an algorithm, certainly, the hidden Markov network, and also some Bayesian network. So we exploring a little bit about as methods, combine them. We can improve a little bit more for the 5 disease prediction. We can get the lift from 1.56 to the 2.05, which for the US data. And we also using that for using more records, more patient records from a Chinese insurance company, which you can see that's 70 million records we can use. And but it's a non-private information because there's no name, no person's name or identification. It's only the sequence, the disease sequence. So we can get 2.35. So it's some improvement and also useful. It's useful for insurance. Could be certainly it's useful for the government to try to predict the disease you might get in the next few years. So might also help some prevention. So that's what we did for the second example. But we think that we can get to kind of lift to the 3 to 4 range. I think we can do that. The idea is, I think, is by maybe first you have to segment the disease. Disease, because of so many diseases, if we can segment them, I think we can eventually get the algorithm to the lift 3 to 4, because now it's only 2.35 or 2, a little bit more than 2. So I think there's a room for improvement. 4 is, I think, is a reasonable limit. The 4 is the limit. I think we guess that the 4 is about the limit you can get for the kind of prediction problem. But I think the algorithm should be able to get to 3 to 4 range. And but this is, certainly without using much about the personalized information. But I think use the genome itself eventually maybe should be able to predict this more or even better result, because that's very personal. If you can find a relationship of the genome and the disease, you should be able to get better prediction in the future. So it's more, I'd say, precisional medicine, precisional prediction, prevention. I think that some work can be done in the future in this regard. And still also for that, we also need to understand algorithm better. So that's something in that area. But that's certainly, as I said, for medical healthcare, there's a lot of work can be done with related to data. Because now we only illustrate the 2 examples using image and also disease sequence record. But you can always use a lot of other clinical data and genome data to help to do more work in that direction. So that's what I would like to share with all of you. Thank you.
Questions?
So
Yeah.
Michael, did you think about going to third order statistics, predicting I as a function of J and K? Of course, it's 1,000 by 1,000 by 1,000, but maybe you can restrict to the top diseases or...
That's right. So I think that's a lot of work can be optimized. We just began to do that in past year or a few months. Because initially when Mike Shoup told us, we thought it could be useful, but we also didn't find real application. But a few months ago, when we started to do some work with insurance company, and we think we get an application area that work. Even when you have good prediction, it can be used for real application. I think could be you certainly on some good idea, which for to improve our application. Thank you.
Hello, Michael. Thanks for your presentation. So thank you. You point out in the last slide that this is like a population survey, right? When you consider it is a series and maybe a marathon process, so it's hard to take the environment influence into consideration. Like different people, they may enter different environments that could largely influence the results. Like what will so in a special environment can lead to a special kind of disease. But I think the disease is like a summary of how your genome has changed. So another level, maybe it's better to look at how those genome transcriptomes or other things, their change, their transmission. Also, another point I want to point out is that why we look at all these disease like a series of things, why not a network? Because I think the records can be largely influenced by when you are diagnosed of those things. If those diseases can happen earlier, but you detect it much later. So that's, maybe use a linear series to capture them all of the maps that accurate. Just two ideas.
Yeah, that's certainly this good idea. For different region, I think if we use a different algorithm for different region, could have a little bit improvement also. But then second, your second question is that some may not have that list, or some did not go to hospital. This could affect certainly the results, the data set. And it's right, but but we are also taking a many larger of data set, so that maybe could be reasonable data set. But what you said is it's difficult to because if someone did not go to the hospital, so did not have this sequence recorded, so maybe we cannot do much.
Yeah, I mean, if you model it in a linear or exact series, then you might think that this may comes after this kind of disease, or there's some later or before relationship. But I mean, it may be more like a network or another kind of model.
Sure. That could be a lot of improvement for this model, as I can.
You want?
Yeah, I'm curious with the data. You just record the patient for each patient disease sequence.
Yeah.
Do you also have the treatment, say medication, when the disease is detected, and what's the result of the medication?
No, for this one, no. We only insurance company only have that the record. Treatment, they probably also have, if they want to find out, I'm not sure if they can get the treatment. If they work with hospital, they might also get treatment. But how treatment can help that model?
Yeah, especially if the data is collected by insurance company.
Right.
They know the treatment received and also in particular the cost.
Right.
They want to get it
Right.
reimbursed.
Right.
Yeah, that one somehow give you a state action and
Right.
reward sequence.
Yeah, right.
And you can probably explore reinforcement learning.
Right.
I'm just curious.
So I think that's still a lot of work can be done and optimized. Certainly, also good idea.
So I have a comment, Michael. I think to me, we programming point of view.
Right.
So can I get my skin cell now?
Right.
Can I create my future, and I can understand within 10 days in the lab how I will evolve? So can I create aging in the lab?
Aging.
And then I will see how vulnerable I am for certain diseases.
For certain disease.
So that means I get my skin now.
Right.
And then can I create my future and see see what are the diseases I am vulnerable to?
Yeah, certainly. As I said, if you have those kind of information, might be able to even predict them more accurately.
Yeah, I prevent.
Yeah, prevent prediction map more accurately and prevent from some certain disease. Yeah, so I think or some information like what you have been doing eventually can be used to also for disease prevention and prediction and prevention. Hi.
So you have for your imaging studies.
Right.
I wanted to know, do you have images that are taken over time or during disease progression or remission, for example, or would those be things you need to plan in prospective studies?
What we now working with is not that much, maybe not that much but we only working with hospital. They have, actually they don't give us many image of the patients, but sometimes we call data augmentation. Means if you have one patient's image, then you have suppose you have a small nodule there, we sometimes do rotation, so get more data, and we also do adding some noise to the image to get more data, more samples. That is also done quite often in deep learning, because deep learning needs a lot of samples. But doctor usually does not want to label that for you. So the hospital only keep, they might label that image. No, the labeling means you have this image, and the best doctor labels that it is, it has small nodule or not. It's type, so they have to label that. So because supervised learning always needs that labeling, but the doctor do not want to do that. So other things. So because they have to go back to the image and to label that small nodule. So they may not want to do that. So they only give limited number of image. And also the image may not as you want. As you said, you can have sequence, maybe also sequence taken at different time. But what we did is just having this image we can get from doctor, from a hospital, and so we also augment the data by some rotation, by some adding some noise there, so get more more samples, and use that samples to train the network.
Do you think that different imaging methods may produce an even higher accuracy than what you have now?
Different image.
So this is low dose CT.
Low dose, yeah. Different image. For breast cancer we use a different, so not low dose. Different image method also could have different accuracy.
You mentioned that neural networks are getting as good, maybe better than doctors at
Close, very close.
Close, sure.
Yeah.
In the near future, probably better. Identifying and classifying things like non-use and colon cancer.
Right.
This might be too hypothetical, but how accurate do you think that machine learning algorithms would have to be before people start to trust them over the doctors themselves?
Themselves now I think it's the time already. We should trust. We should trust definitely, and at least can help out a lot to be
We're working together.
Yeah, we are working together, and so I'm not sure about U.S., but China is also going to issue some they call CFDA license, so which those kind of decisions can be used. For the real medical use.
Well, very often the results of the clinic are not nearly as good as what's published or presented in regulatory submissions, because the experienced radiologists or image interpreters perform at the highest level in the field. Others who are media are less experienced, or more rushed,
Right.
or tolerate more uncertainty and still make a diagnosis. So the chances are very good to be more reliable, more consistent with these kinds of methods than with the eyes and the brains.
Right. But also it's learning from the best doctor, because that's important. Because it's labeled by the best doctor, because so it's much better than the typical radiologist. So that's the important.
And as you were discussing the disease prediction, I thought there was an interesting distinction where as you predict diseases and you get better at that, you start to do preventative medicine. Maybe the person doesn't develop the disease that you predicted, right? So you think that your prediction was wrong, but it's really because you prevented it. And then Nika's point of being able to predict your future and grow whatever organs you need from your skin, it would be an interesting solution to that problem where you develop your organ on the side where you get no preventative medicine, and then you have the person that has the preventative medicine, and you can verify that, oh, that person would have developed a disease, but they didn't because we caught it early. They have a cool merger of these ideas.
Yeah, this disease prediction, I'm not sure if it's useful for a particular person, but it seems it could be useful for statistically.
Yeah.
So it's kind of useful for insurance company to design the pricing scheme because they will predict what kind of disease you might get statistically. So as long as you have think it's better than the like most frequency or some way, even you can also use it to predict. As long as if it's better than that, they can issue the policy or and decide the price better to accommodate the disease probability. So that's what I see. We think it could be useful. But we also still in the early stage. But I think a lot of insurance when they look at this result, we think it's useful for them to determine mainly the pricing for certain group, like even the group insurance, because if sometimes they issue group insurance policy to enterprise, so enterprise can have a lot of employees, so they can't look at each employee's history and determine a price. So could be a different price for different enterprise based on the probability of getting certain disease.
But some people in the population will be at higher or lower risk for lung cancer, breast cancer.
Right.
But they might be opposite risk for heart disease or some other disease.
Yeah, so I just think because it seems that problem is mentioned to me by Mike Shub, but I think that problem maybe also should be studied by some people else. But seems we didn't find much, but I thought it's could be a good problem now for us to look at, and it's also not so difficult to start. And it's easier to start than deep learning neural networks. You need a lot of computation power.
So there are a lot of work, Michael, done in something called GWAS, genome-wide association studies.
Right.
That means from something called SNPs. You can have to see the risk for certain populations for certain diseases.
Right.
So I have a lot of ideas.
Sure. So I think but for a genome, certainly for a protein, we always try to find the relationship between this disease and the genome data.
Yeah.
So but that certainly is not easy to do up to now.
Yeah.
So, but I think that's the direction we also want to pursue. Eventually, that if we have genome information or protein information, and there will come disease, what's the kind of probability of getting certain disease, also the probability of the top disease you might get based on those kind of information. I think that's always a good direction we would like to pursue. But this problem seems a little easy to start with, so that's what we are doing first.
Thanks again.